Imagine a region that is only a 2-hour drive from Paris, has beautiful rolling hills with fog in the mornings coming over enchanting rivers with forests in the background. It's known for delicious food, incredible wines, and lots of historic chateaus or castles. If this sounds like something that interests you, then the Loire Valley is definitely a destination you want to check out. Hi friends, my name is Sarah and I'm a certified sommelier and host of the Wine CEO podcast. The last few weeks I've been going through all of the regions in France that I visited this last summer on my 8-week trip through France. It was incredible and the Loire Valley was definitely a bucket list destination. So today on the show, I am telling you all about my top tips for visiting this beautiful region, as well as some incredible food and wine pairings with the delicious wines of the Loire. And don't worry, if you don't have the ability to travel to the Loire Valley in the near future, that's okay, because a lot of these food and wine pairings you can recreate at home and feel like you're in the Loire Valley yourself. All right, so my first tip for visiting the Loire Valley is that you definitely need to rent a car. Now, this is pretty common in most wine regions because if you remember, vineyards are farms. So they're going to be pretty spread out from your typical urban area, and you're likely going to need a car to be able to get from one to the next. But the Loire Valley is even more challenging than the typical wine region. Because of the geographic landscape of the Loire, it spreads from east to west along the Loire River. So this is an extremely wide area and it can take about 5 hours to drive from one side to the next. So this is definitely not a quick and easy region that you can travel from one side to the other in one day. It's a place that you need to dedicate at least a few days to explore. In fact, this summer when I visited with my friend Jeannie, we really stayed close to the central and eastern Loire areas because we only had 3 days in the region and it was definitely not enough time to see all of the amazing aspects of the Loire Valley. So if you're really wanting to check out this region, definitely rent a car. We found that it would sometimes take an hour to an hour and a half to travel between two castles that on the map looked somewhat close together. Additionally, many of the wineries are very spread out. They could be on opposite sides of the river, even if they're in the same region or appellation. And so you will need a car to get around. There's not a lot of great public transportation. Trains will get you to some of the major cities, but if you want to visit anything outside of those cities, like the castles and many of the vineyards, you will definitely need a car. My second tip for you is that you really want to plan out how much you're going to be able to see in the period of time you're there. So if you only have a day or two, you're likely only going to be able to see one city or one region within the Loire. As a reminder, there's 3 main regions. There's the Eastern Loire, Central Loire, and the Western Loire. And so you're probably going to need to limit it to one of those 3 regions if you have less than 3 or 4 days in the Loire. Now, if you have more like a week to visit, you could probably tackle at least 2 of these regions, maybe even 3 if you're ambitious, but it's important to note that again, it will take a long time to travel between them, so don't try to do too much. On your first trip to the Loire, pick one region that you want to visit, focus on that, and get to enjoy every aspect of it, especially because there's so many incredible historic castles scattered all across the Loire, and you're going to find different terrain everywhere you go throughout the Loire. You don't want to try and squeeze too much in a short period of time because you'll feel very rushed and you'll spend most of your time in a car. One thing you could consider if you want to see more of the Loire Valley in a short period of time is doing a river cruise. There are a lot of European cruises that offer Loire Valley itineraries, and it helps you see most or all of the Loire Valley in a fairly short period of time. The great thing about a cruise also is that they're going to do all of the land excursions and help organize those things for you so that you would be able to visit castles, vineyards, and a lot of the historic sites without needing to plan those things on your own. This is also a great idea if you want to drink quite a bit while you're driving because France is very strict about the legal blood alcohol limits, and so you definitely do not want to drink and drive while you're in France. You want to make sure that you're staying sober, so you can either swish and spit while you're at a winery, or you could choose to do a guided tour where someone's driving you, whether that's from the cruise line or something that you book on your own, and that way you don't have to worry about it. But definitely doing a river cruise down the Loire Valley will actually help you hit a lot of sites in a short period of time because you're going to be sleeping in the evenings while they're taking you to the next destination. So definitely a fun one to check out. I didn't do that this trip, but it's something I would definitely consider for the future. Now, my next tip has to do specifically with the wineries. So the Loire Valley is definitely an area that's growing when it comes to wine tourism, but it's one where many of the wineries are owned by small families, small businesses, or cooperatives. And so it's not as easy to just walk up to a cellar door and have a tasting. often you must have a reservation or the tasting room may not even be open. There may not be anyone that's scheduled to work there that day. So it's really important to check in advance. You can definitely book a reservation on the Winery Direct's website, but if you don't know which winery you want to visit, you can check out a great website like Rue de Vigneron. This is a website that I used throughout my entire time in France, and it's a website specifically for winemakers that can post a opportunity for folks to come taste at their winery. It's used in a lot of the major wine regions around France, so that is an awesome one to check out. You can also just go on Google and search for wine tastings in that area, and often you can find links to specific websites for wineries that you can go ahead and book a tasting at. Another one that I love to check out is Airbnb experiences. Often in a particular region, you'll find that there are wineries that post on Airbnb experiences the same experiences that they offer on Rue de Vignerons and their main website. So you have multiple places to be able to find wineries that offer tastings at their cellar door. So you can kind of search the region, see what's close to where you are, and then book something at a local winery. But definitely book in advance. One quick tip on that, don't be intimidated if you check out the winery website and everything is only in French. I found that a lot of times as I was traveling around the region, but after emailing the winery directly, there were folks that did speak English or enough to be able to make a tasting or tour possible. So you can always email them in advance and ask if they have someone who can speak English if you're more comfortable with that. You could also ask the hotel you're staying at if they can call the winery in advance for you in French to see if they are willing to welcome someone in English or if there might be another opportunity for a different winery that you could check out. I think it's always just the respectful thing as well to book a reservation in advance. It helps the winery be able to plan and make sure that they have the right staffing for the day, they have enough wine bottles open, and just makes for an easier experience when you're traveling around the region. You don't want to show up somewhere and find out that you didn't book any reservations in advance and none of the wineries are open, and then you don't necessarily get to do a wine tasting and you were hoping to do that, right? So always good to book in advance. It's also, as I mentioned a moment ago, a great idea to check with your local hotel or maybe at a local restaurant, because in a lot of wine regions, folks are connected. They have friends who work in the wine industry. Maybe their family member might own a winery or know someone who does. So don't be afraid to ask around when you're in some of these small towns to see if they have any recommendations on a great winery to visit. You might be surprised. You could find a hidden gem in something that's a really small production, family-owned winery that you wouldn't have been able to find online because they're not posted on Airbnb experiences, Rue de Vignerons, or maybe even Google. So just a fun little tip to be able to check out as well. Okay, so my next tip is honestly my favorite experience while I was in the Loire, and that's hard because there were so many incredible things, but I went on a hot air balloon ride, and this was the first time I had ever been in a hot air balloon. And let me tell you, I'm not sure I could ever do it again and have it beat this experience, because I felt like it was the most beautiful way to see the Loire Valley. It was a foggy morning. Jeannie and I had to get up at like 4:30 in the morning to catch this hot air balloon ride. And when we got there, it was dark and they were setting up the hot air balloon and it was cold. But as we were lifting up off the ground, the fog covered the beautiful forest of the Loire Valley. And as we got a little higher in the air, we were able to start seeing beautiful castles that were covered by the fog and the sunrise coming up over the vineyards. It was absolutely stunning. There was wildlife running through the fields. It was incredible. Absolutely a beautiful experience. And by the time we got up there, there were dozens of other hot air balloons that were joining us in the sky, and it was absolutely stunning. We went with Terre d'Anval, the Touraine hot air balloon company, and they were amazing. Let me tell you, when we were done with the hot air balloon ride, we thought that that was just the end of the experience, but then they set up a cute little picnic with sparkling wine and pastries and candies and coffee, and they had this beautiful breakfast spread that they set up for everyone right in the field where we landed with our hot air balloon ride, and it was the perfect end to our experience. You can do a sunset tour with them as well, but I loved doing the morning because it was a great way to be able to see the region where there were no cars and just not a lot happening yet, and it was just absolutely stunning. So highly, highly recommend doing a hot air balloon ride if you travel to the Loire Valley. Now, I mentioned castles just a moment ago, and that was definitely a highlight on the hot air balloon ride, but it's also a big part of the history and culture of the Loire region in general. The Loire has dozens of castles all across the region, and they're known for having been the houses for many monarchs and royalty from France for many, many years. Some of them were hunting lodges of French kings, and often you can visit a lot of these castles, or chateaus, the French word for castle, today. Some of them are even small enough castles and chateaus that you can actually stay in them. They've been converted into hotels or Airbnbs, and they make for beautiful places to stay while you're visiting the Loire Valley. My two favorites that Jeannie and I visited were Chateau Chambord and Chateau Chenonceau. These two castles were absolutely stunning. They're beautiful heritage sites within France and places that you absolutely cannot miss if you're traveling through the region. There are so many great castles to be able to explore, but one of our friends that we met in the local area said that these two were her personal favorites, and I'm so glad that we checked them out because they were stunning. Two very different and unique castles in their own way with beautiful history to each of them. While Chateau Chambord was this beautiful big hunting lodge that had been used by the French king for years, Chateau Chenonceau was much smaller, but the World War II history here was incredible. The castle sits right along the river that had been the demarcation line between occupied territory and free France. And so many Allied soldiers actually helped smuggle French citizens through Chateau Chenonceau into the free region of France away from occupied territory, and it has incredible history within the walls of this castle. So definitely a place to check out. You can't miss either of these castles, but there's lots of beautiful things to see in the chateaus of the Loire Valley. Now, my last tip for visiting the Loire Valley is going to give us a little bit of an intro into the second half of our episode, and that is all about pairing the Loire Valley wines with incredible food. I think that food and wine pairings in general are the perfect marriage. You cannot enjoy them without one another because they just really help enhance one another and make your experience so much better on your palate. But the Loire Valley has some especially delicious food and wine pairings, and I'm going to tell you all about them because you'll find them all throughout restaurants in the Loire Valley. And while I didn't find the food to be quite as gourmet as, say, Burgundy or the Rhone, because those areas around Lyon, which is one of the top gastronomic cities in the world, the food in the Loire was a bit more rustic and hearty, but the recipes were absolutely incredible, and the food, while simple, was incredibly flavorful. So some of the top food and wine pairings that you'll find throughout the Loire Valley are sausage and Cabernet Franc, first of all. Some of the sausages that you will find throughout the Loire Valley are absolutely incredible, and whether they are charcuterie style, so they're smoked meats, or they're raw fresh meat that's been cooked, you'll find a lot of veal and pork that's been spiced with dried herbs, garlic, onions, fresh herbs, and they're absolutely delicious paired with Cabernet Franc. Cabernet Franc has this nice earthy characteristic, and in this particular region in the Loire Valley, often it has really high acidity, which helps pair nicely with fatty meats like some of those game meats. If you don't have any type of maybe pork or veal sausage nearby, one of my personal favorites is actually pairing Cabernet Franc with barbecue chicken. The sweetness of the barbecue sauce goes really well with that kind of tangy, acidic Cabernet Franc from the Loire Valley, and it is a marriage made in heaven. The second pairing that I absolutely love from the Loire Valley, and this isn't for everyone, but it's definitely pairing Muscadet white wine with oysters. There are oysters right off the coast near Nantes, which is on the western region of the Loire, and this is a classic pairing that you'll find all around the world because it goes so well together. The acidic salinity of the Muscadet is a great pairing with the oysters, and whether they're raw or fried, it's just a fabulous pairing. You can also pair Muscadet with moules frites, which are steamed mussels that are often cooked in white wine with garlic and fresh herbs, and then topped with fresh cut French fries. Oh my goodness, I love this dish. It's absolutely incredible paired with Muscadet. Again, you have that like salty salinity that goes so well with the mussels or any type of shellfish. So honestly, if you're looking to pair seafood, Muscadet from the Loire is an amazing option. It's actually made from the grape Melon de Bourgogne, and so it's a little bit different than some other varieties of Muscadet that you might be familiar with. This particular Muscadet is really refreshing and acidic and light, perfect for summertime, going into the fall, like right now if you're enjoying oysters. It's an amazing pairing and one that I highly recommend if you're doing any type of shellfish or really seafood in general. My third pairing is one that is very common, so you've probably heard of it before, but it is delicious and found all across the Loire Valley, and that is goat cheese with Sauvignon Blanc. First, the goat cheese from the Loire Valley is world-renowned. They make a lot of different versions. They make soft goat cheese, semi-soft, hard goat cheese. They'll do different types of flavors like herbs in the goat cheese or encrusted around the goat cheese. They'll also do goat cheese that's been aged. So goat cheese in this region is very, very popular, and it's been made for centuries. So definitely a staple to the diet in the Loire Valley, and you'll find goat cheese everywhere. And it's often paired with the Sauvignon Blanc from the region. So Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire, there's a lot of different regions that are known for this, but Pouilly-Fumé and Sancerre are two of the most popular and most famous for having incredible Sauvignon Blanc. Unlike some other regions of the world, like New Zealand or California, for example, that have like really bright, fresh grapefruit and sometimes kind of grassy characteristic to it, the Sauvignon Blancs that are from Sancerre and Pouilly-Fumé are known for having a little bit of this like wet stone, slate, almost chalky kind of characteristic. And this gives this really refreshing acidity, but also really like strong earth kind of characteristic that is almost a kind of steely combination when you put it with the tangy goat cheese that you get from the Loire Valley. So really delicious when you put them together because you have this tangy goat cheese with this refreshing Sauvignon Blanc that has great citrus notes and a little bit of that kind of wet stone characteristic that helps cleanse the palate. Really amazing pairing together, and it's one that you can definitely recreate at home if you have goat cheese, even if it's not made in the Loire Valley. Pretty much any type of goat cheese is going to be a delicious pairing with Sauvignon Blanc, especially a Sauvignon Blanc from the Loire Valley. And then last but not least, there's an incredible dessert that's known from the Loire Valley called tarte tartane. And this is something that has actually been made very popular all across France. You'll find a lot of cafes in Paris that are serving tarte tartane and throughout the rest of the country. And it's basically an apple tart. But it's originally from the Loire Valley, and this region truly has made it famous because the tarte tartane that you will find in this area is incredible. Like, I think it was some of the best apple tart that I've ever had in my life. If you can't have a tarte tartane, you can definitely have apple pie at home and pair it with my recommendation for tarte tartane, and that is a sweet Chenin Blanc. Now, Chenin Blanc is a grape variety that's made into a lot of different styles of wine in the Loire Valley. You'll find it made into sweet wine, dry wine, semi-sweet, sparkling wine. So there's a lot of different options when you're looking for Chenin Blanc. The Loire Valley is known for incredible Chenin Blanc, and while this grape is also grown in a lot of other regions of the world, it has found its home in the Loire Valley, and that is where it's really known for being at its peak. Chenin Blanc that is sweeter is going to have these really nice kind of candied apple notes and honeyed kind of characteristics. So if you can find a really sweet Chenin Blanc that's going to be even a little bit sweeter than that tarte tartane, it's going to be the perfect pairing to go with your apple tart. Such a delicious combination when you have that honeyed apple characteristic in the wine to go with that sweet apple tart. Oh, chef's kiss. It is a perfect pairing and something that I highly, highly recommend. So I hope this was a fun episode to get you inspired about maybe visiting the Loire Valley someday, or if you can't visit the Loire Valley today, doing some food and wine pairing creations at home that help bring you a little bit closer to understanding the wines of the Loire Valley and the amazing French foods that have made that region so incredibly famous. If you learned something new from today's episode, don't forget to like and share with a friend. If you haven't subscribed to my channel yet, please do so. I drop new episodes every Wednesday morning so that you can learn wine content in a fun and approachable way. I'm here to make wine as easy as possible. I know that sometimes sommeliers can be intimidating and the wine world can feel really overwhelming. So I try to break up wine into small little sections of easy digestible information every week so that you can make your wine journey so much more fun and you can impress all your friends and family with your new wine information that you learn for free every week on the Wine CEO podcast. Until next week, friends, I hope you drink something new and delicious, and I will catch you all next Wednesday on the Wine CEO podcast.